key. But let's see if we can key it. I'm looking for the key. All right. Convert to key. Let's say frame 35. Let's move it. Oh, I didn't key. Why? I don't know. This is a new version. Yeah, anyway, so later na yung animation na yan. Yan. Okay, set key. Here it is. All right. Yes, set. So I'm just gonna move up. Okay, so let's say let's undo this. Yeah. Okay. It's not moving, you guys. Okay. All right. Cool. Sige.
It's moving a little bit.
Okay. Gonna give me a heart attack. All right. So let's try keying. All right. So I keyed frame 1. Right. So I keyed frame 1. And then what I want to do is I want to move it, let's say, at frame 35. Easy. Let's move it, let's say, up there. Just for frame 35. And then let's say I'm going to add another key. Yet. And then let's play. That's pretty much it. Okay, so simple animation. And I'm just going to stop that. Okay. So we didn't draw it manually, right? So anyway, let's get rid of that. Let's scrub at 1. All right. So if you would notice as well, so once I keyed something, everything now is at red. So that means this one, okay, on that channel box, right? You see that all of the information is red. Okay, that means it's keyed. Okay, so anyway, the main reason why we want to set it up that rig, right, is because so that it's going to be easier to actually animate using the keying process, no, or the tweening process. So what it does, no, so what Maya or the software does is it tweens or it draws. Okay, so here we go. So it draws every single frame, okay, until it moves to the next key, right? And it's pretty crucial, right? What if, for example, I am going to add, let's say, a rotate, right? So let's say I rotate. So once I reach 35, right? So I'm going to add a different thing. So let's say I want, what we call this, it rotates. Okay, I'll do that. So as you can see, this updated, right? So that means I need to key it again. So there you go. So now it's red. So that means it's at the right key. Okay, so I'll scrub again. Scrub again. Maybe I'll make it the timeline smaller. Yeah. So anyway, so yeah, I'll scrub it. Okay, so now that's pretty much how animation works, right? However, how would your rigging come in? So it's basically the setup. Okay, so first concept that I want you guys to understand when it comes to rigging is basically it deals with a pivot. Okay, so with the pivot, right? So how do we work with the pivot? Okay, so with the pivot, what we want to do is what if, for example, we move the pivot, right? So if I move the pivot, right? So if I'm going to move the pivot, I'm just gonna press D, right? And then let's say I'm gonna snap it. Okay, limited net screen go. Anyway, so I'm just gonna move this here. So that. So let's say that's my pivot. This is where my pivot should be. Okay. Then let's say I'll go back, right? And then what if, for example, I move it, and then let's key it again. Okay, so I'm gonna key it again. Okay, so because of the pivot, so everything is going to change. Okay, so let's see. So I've scrubbed it again. So look, because I changed the pivot, so the animation actually changed as well, right? Because of the change of the pivot, right? So it's because of the change of the pivot. So that means in animation, the pivot is very crucial, and that's how we should actually plan it. All right. So how do we move a pivot again? So it's basically just pressing D. Okay. So when you're in the move, all right. So it's like when you're move. Okay. Uh, all you need to do is just press D, okay, to move your pivot. Okay, you can also snap the grid or points. Okay, is that clear? All right. So let's say, so how do we use what do you call this? How do we use the pivots then, especially for rigging? Okay. So well, think of it like, for example, like what if we create a character like this? Okay. So let's say we're going to create a really simple character. It's going to duplicate. Just going to move is that. Okay. So let's say I'm fine with that. So let's say I'm fine with that, right? So with rigging, it's basically just putting the pivots to where you want movement to actually uh, to pivot in. Okay, so what I mean by that is, for example, so let's bring this back. So I'm going to take out wireframe shape. Okay. So what I meant by that is, so for example, here, okay, so I've already moved the pivot for each, right? So here, instead of the usual center, if I'm going to move it, okay, so it's a certain pivot for them. Same with this, okay. It's not at the center anymore. So because anatomically, diba? So if you would think about it, the neck is probably somewhere around offset, off the head, right? So if I'm going to change it like that, so it's just like that. And we can animate it by tweening, right? So same with this, right? So if I want to animate, what do you call this? I want to animate, let's say, gestures of the arm or something. Or we're starting with the very basics. So that's why we have something like this. I want to explain how the pivot works, right? So it's basically just adjusting the pivot, and we can animate from here. So just by like what I said, right? You can just tween. Okay. So every time you tween, right? So it's going to be recorded by Maya, and it's just going to animate it through tweening, right? So basically, what I did was I adjusted all of the pivots so that it is in a certain manner, right? That it can do movements, right? That can translate to something that's believable, especially for characters. Okay? I hope I'm making sense. So, for example, like this, right? So um, I can make the legs go this way or whatever. Okay. I can put a knee or I know, but that's another story. Okay. So do you understand the concept of a pivot, right? So it's really easy. Okay. Pivots is just basically putting where a joint is supposed to be. Okay. Or where it's going to turn. Okay. Basically, that's where the pivot should be. Okay, or in reference, right? So look, if I am going to, let's say, create, if I'm going to create another square, for example, take this out. All right, so yeah, okay. So I can manipulate it depending on the pivots as well. So look at this now. So what would happen if I change the position of the pivot again? So like that. And I'll move it, let's say, okay. So what would happen if I scale it? Okay. So look what happens if the pivot is there and I scale it. So let's say I'm going to constrain this. Okay. So check it out. So look at that, because my pivot is there. Look. So it is scaling going this direction, right? So the pivot actually affects the way it scales, right? The way it rotates, okay? And even how you move it, okay? So let's say with rotate, or no. So because the pivot is there, obviously, so the way it rotates is now different because you changed the axis, right? Okay. So that's the very first concept of what we call this. Uh, of making the rings. However, so what if, for example, uh, select this. So as of right now, so I have, let's say, this character. What if I want to rotate? Okay, so let's say if I want to rotate, and I've selected everything, right? Let's see what happens if I rotate. See what happens. It's doing this weird thing. Okay, because each of them has its own pivot, right? So it's not dependent on which, right? So what do we do? So the next thing that we need to do right now is basically assign a hierarchy, or this is where parenting would come in. Okay, so with parenting, okay, so let's try to understand that concept. Okay, so with parenting, so let's say I'll make a sphere. This is the sphere. So I'm just gonna, what if I want to parent this with this? Okay, so last selected is the parent. So to parent it, I'm just gonna press P, okay, for Papa. Okay. there you go. So let's see what happens. Because now this is a parent. The sphere is now the parent of the cube, right? So hierarchically, okay, you can actually see the hierarchy here, right? So let's see what happens if I rotate it now. Okay, so if I rotate it, you see that? So the child is now dependent on the parent. Okay. So, however, if you select this, it can still move. So the parent is not dependent on the child. Okay. So it's really about dependency. Right? So it can go at the chain. Okay, so we can actually add and add and add. We can also do this. I can select and I can duplicate. So if I duplicate. However, what do you think is happening? Because I selected both, right? Then it's just a duplicate, right? So it means I'm moving this, okay? But if I select this one, just the sphere, look, if I move it, there, you see the difference? You see the difference? If I select both, no, I select both, and then I move it, or yeah, there. You see that? So it's doing that naman. So I've selected both. Okay, so look at my outliner. I've selected both. Okay. Compared to just selecting a parent. Okay. So it also rotates, for example. See how to rotate it?
So, sir,
Yes, go ahead.
even if you select both the parent and the child's speed would be doubled as if it was.
Because, like I said, supposedly the parent is not dependent on the child, but you've selected the child. So look at this. If I'm going to select both of them, if I rotate it, see that? It's rotating weird, right? So we don't want that to happen, okay? So what we want, that's why we have the hierarchy, right? Because this is not dependent on the child. The child is always following the parent. So then, if we do that, then this is what you get. Okay? Understand? That goes the same with scaling. Okay, so if I've scaled this, right? Look, if I've scaled this and I've just selected the parent, right? Let's see what happens. There you go, it scales. However, what if we select both, right? Scale it, see that? So it's not scaling properly. Understand? So there is some dependencies. There are some which is independent, which should not be done. Let's say I can do this separately. I can scale it like this. And also look at this, no? Because I moved the pivot here, look, the way it scales now, it's not scaling that much here on the left. Compared to, let's say I have, oops, say I have this. See what happens if I scale it. If I scale it, look, it's gonna scale dependent on the pivot. Yeah, so it's like emanating from the pivot. Compared to, let's say this one, right? I scale it. It's dependent on the pivot. Let's say I'll do that here. Look, it's extending from the pivot. Compared to here, I'm going to extend it. You understand? It's dependent on the pivot.
Yes.
On the parents as well. Okay? So for example, so like this, right? Okay. So how do we rig this then? So to rig this, okay, to rig a simple character, we can actually just insert this into the hierarchy. So the torso, so I renamed it already, right? So the torso is your root. Okay, so that means this is the joint that you usually want to select is the pelvis. Okay, so but this doesn't have a pelvis, so it's basically just one block. Okay, so this is going to be where my what do you call this main joint would be. Okay, this would be the pair. Okay, so that means if I'm going to add this, so for example, I want to add that. I want this as the parent. Okay, so what's it going to do? Okay, so it's just going to put it under the torso. So if I'm going to press P, the parent, there you go. So everything now is under torso. So what does that mean? So if I select torso, I can now hit, right, without selecting them all. Okay. Well, let's see what happens if we select everything again. So it's the same thing, right? Right. So we don't want that. Okay. So what we want, that's why I'm showing you this, because the parenting is very important. Okay. But here's another thing. So we can we can establish a hierarchy as well. Okay, so this one should be dependent on this one, right? So that means if I'm going to select this, last selected is the parent, right? So select that, and then I'm going to parent. So E, all right, so look at that. So the left arm right now has two components, okay? So what I want to do is I want to select the parent. Oh, I have a class answer. Yeah. So look at this. So if now, because it's in a hierarchy now, so I can actually tween and animate from here. So this is the most basic, okay, it's the most basic, okay, rig. However, it still has its flaws. Okay, so be careful. Look at this. If I do that, like, so look at this. If I'm going to, it's doing that. Okay, it has flaws. Okay. Hence, we will have some solutions to that. This example. Right. So normally, do we want that to happen? Okay, so if you're going to do that, okay, so simple actions like this, it's okay. But if you're going to do this, right, so, oh, there's a problem, right? So maybe what you could do, instead of like putting it in a hierarchy, it doesn't need it anyway, then you just take it out. However, if it's in a hierarchy, so let's put this there. So I'm going to add this to this whole thing. So I'm going to parent it. Yeah. So now I can select the whole thing. Okay. So to group by parenting makes it easier for us to actually select and move a character. Select and move, and basically the orientation of the character as well. Okay, so let's explore how parenting works pala. No? Okay, so this time around, what I want to do is I want to start na with using the joints. Okay, so with joints, um, what I'm going to do is, let's say I'll make squares. Okay, so let's use this. Let's say I want scale this. Okay. Then I'm just going to move this like so. Okay. All right. So for example, I want this thing to be part of a joint. So uh, I'll show you later. Okay, let's create a joint. So to create some joints, no? So that it's to understand how joints work. Okay, let's start now by changing the mode of Maya. Okay, so from animation, yeah. So you normally default would be at modeling, right? So I'm going to move to rigging. Okay, so I'm going to move to rigging. Okay, and then I can also change my shelf here by changing the tab. So I'll go to rigging. All right. So to create joints, I can actually just click on this or under skeleton, create joints. Okay. All right. So easy. So I can just go click on this. Right? So I can create joints now. So to create joints, okay, please observe lang. Uh, when I create joints, its default would be it would be on the grid. Okay. So it's just gonna follow the grid. Okay. So that's your joint. Okay. Uh, okay. That. So a joint is basically like this. Okay? It's like a skeleton. So these are your joints. These are your joints. This is the bone. Okay. So the bones are actually just graphical representations. It does not provide any real function other than just a representation. Okay. So the truth is, right? So what the computer sees, or what Maya sees, is just dots. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Just 5 dots. Wherein he actually manipulates the what do you call this? The coordinates, the rotation degrees, and the scaling. Okay. So anyway, so let's get back here. Um, so with this, no, a joint is now dependent. They're actually parented to each other. So look at this now. So joint one, you have the joint two, this one. So it's a hierarchy pa rin. So it's the same thing that I'm showing you, right? The concept is the same, okay? So it's all arranged in a hierarchy. So it's all just going to the parent thing. Okay, so that means this is dependent to that, this is dependent to that, this is dependent to that, and finally, this is dependent to that. Okay, you see the concept now? So from, what do you call that? From pivots to parenting. Okay, you see the concept? So you can now create joints. However, okay, let's go a little more in depth. Okay, so what if, for example, I want to rig? Okay, so the most basic rig that we can come up with is through parenting. Okay, so first thing first. Okay, let's say I want to shift to this view so that it's easier for me to navigate. Let's focus on that. I know that I don't want that. I want to focus on this. So for example, I want to rig this. Okay, so the most basic way of actually rigging is just making those joints. Okay, so I'm just going to put that joint here. It's going to connect it here and connect it. What if I put the joint? Yeah, end it there. And finally, Uh, all right, so same as parenting, right? So let's see what happens if I do some parenting. So I want this to be dependent on this joint. So again, last selected is the parent, right? So I'm going to select this, okay? And I'm going to press P for parent. Look at the outliner, ha? So if I'm gonna click on that, P, okay. So what happened? So with this joint, I have now, so this is connected to that, right? To joint 8. Right. So next, how about this? I want this to be dependent on this parent. Okay. So I'm going to parent that again. And finally, what I want is this should be okay, this parent. Press D again. So, okay, so what happened? Okay. So look at this. So because I parented it, so if I can move this now, say I want to rotate. Okay. You get the concept? Huh? You get the concept? Um, so the perspective mode so that you can see it better. Okay. So as you can see, I've actually made that nice. You can now actually move it. So same with this, okay? Because what we want to do is we want to see. So I want to select this. I can actually just select. Hirap ng trackpad. Okay, select this. That. Yeah. So look at this. No? So if I'm going to select that, I can move everything. Okay, so I can do the same thing pala with my small this figure. Okay. All right. So I can actually rig it like so as well. Okay. So uh, I will make this a little short lang. I'm just going to explain this concept lang. Uh, I'm going to upload naman the video as but the concept is basically with rigging, right? So you are associating a mesh with the joints, okay? So that means you can manipulate it to even the component level. So let's say I want to go manipulate vertices, right? So I can actually tween. So these vertices can serve as pivot points as well. Okay, so what if I want to move, right? So I want to move this and key it, okay? I can even simulate like breathing if I want. Okay, so if I move this, so look, select it. Okay, so I can actually make it, for example, that it's doing this, right? So it serves as pivots as well. Okay, so anyway, let's say I'll go back to object mode. So I can now actually rig this with the basic rigging that I showed you, right? However, we can even go beyond that. One thing that you need to understand though is that pivot, no, not pivots, joints have limitations too, just as I've shown you as well. Okay, from the very concept of just using the pivot, it has limitations, right? And then what if we added the concept of having the hierarchy, which is just parenting, right? It's better, but you still have some issues. So it goes the same Ren, with working with joints, okay? So anyway, so with joints, uh, object. What happened? Are you guys still there? Hello?
Yes, sir. I can understand it.
Okay. It's like my Maya crashed. No.
Yes, sir.
We
It's
can still
still.
see we can see your mouse moving.
Yeah, I know, but my Maya crashed.
Oh, did it freeze, sir?
Yes, it did. Well, let's just reset it.
It's actually moving at exactly with missing frames left.
Or I'm just gonna set my Maya. So while we're doing that, maybe I can start importing. Maybe later. Yeah, later. Smart.
So if I may ask a question just regarding the news, the computers new in the GDD lab now ever since like before face to face, or have they been the same?
It's the same, yes. Why?
I just remember because said that before the pandemic, I forgot who said that one of the profs said that the GDD lab will be upgraded like in 2020 or something.
Yes, it was supposed to be upgraded. But the pandemic hit, so yeah. So it was put on hold. It's actually okay that it didn't push through. But right now, we're going to be upgrading this. And that's also the reason why we're actually charging the lab fees already. Because otherwise, where are we going to start, right? So we need to start the funding, okay? So that we can, what do you call it? Let's start now with the software and the hardware. So anyway, so let's get back. Anyway, so any questions so far? So let me check the chat. Intel CPU is coming out. Okay. You were waiting for it to crash. Well, I'm on my Mac because this is just this is a Mac. It's not really built for this. Okay, so let's wait and see. All right. So anyway, I showed you how the joints work, right? So same with uh, let's go that up. All right. So talk about joints, right? So joints is just basically a skeletal structure. It's just a skeletal structure. Okay, but what I showed you is just the basic use of it by using the pivots and parenting, or basically just a hierarchy. We haven't really bind it with a mesh yet. Okay. All right. So maybe what I'll do right now is I'm going to bind a mesh. Okay. So, but this time around, your topology and your geometry of a mesh is now important, like so. Okay. So let's see. Let's try to explain that. Sige, sige. All right. So before I get to another concept, I'll explain the binding first. So what I'll do is I'll create a polygon primitive lang. Let's say a cylinder. A cylinder. So I have that kind of geometry. So I'm just going to duplicate this. Okay. And then I'm just going to move this here. It's done. So with this, I am going to select the other components. Right. So I'm just going to change this. And I'm just going to, oops, select it. Just going to do that like so. And the other one, so say,
Is this where I can find Sir Henry Castro?
yeah, is he? He's on the first room.
First room. Oh, sige, sige.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Here. Is he there? Yeah, anyway. All right. So let's say I want to select this. Yeah, it's just gonna move that down as well. Okay. But this time, this one, I'm just going to sit down. You see the difference in geometry? Okay. It's a bit of a problem there. See that? See the changes in shading. Right. Anyway, so usually those are for hard edges or whatever. Okay, so let's see what happens if I bind what we call this. Let's say I'll create some joints here. Okay, so I'm just going to create a joint. So here, let's say 1, 2, 6. Okay. I'm going to press enter so that I can let's go wireframe so that you can see the joint there. Okay. The other, okay, I'm just going to make it really simple. Okay. So I'm going to make another joint. So this time around, I'm just going to make it like this. Okay. All right. Or better yet, I'll make it a simple joint up there. So I'll make another joint. This time, like this time there. Okay. All right. See that? Okay. What I'm going to do is I'm going to bind it. Okay. So let's go back. However, okay, so good. Nasa origin naman pala. Okay, so look at this. So I'm going to go to wireframe, right? And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to select this, and then I'm going to last select the joint, right? And then under rigging, so on this skin, I'm just going to click on bind skin. Okay, so it's bound now. Same with this, right? So as you notice, no, the colors of the joint changed already. Okay, last select this time around the joint. There we go. Bind skin, skin, bind skin. Okay, so let's see the difference. Okay, so if I'm going to select this joint and rotate it, see that? You see the deformation? You see the deformation that's happening. Right? So let's see what happens if this one, I rotate this naman. You see the problem? So let's say I'll turn on the shaders back on, and you can see because I've added more geometry to this, right? So it's not being affected that much with the deformation. Not like this. It's doing those angles anymore. It's doing these angles, right? So usually when we put the joints, right, we add padding with geometry. So same as this. There. See that? You see the concept? If I left it like one lang, so it's going to do this. Okay? You understand the concept? Okay? You understand the concept on how we're actually doing
Yes, sir.
this? Okay. So next concept that I want to share, and last concept actually, is I want to show you the gimbal lock. Okay, so there's what you call a gimbal lock. So let's say I'll create a joint. I forgot one more thing for that. So let's say I'll make a joint like so. Okay. This. So from here, I can also change the size of the joints. Okay, so it's under my channel box, right? So for example, I want to select this, right? I've selected that joint, and I can change the size of the joint by changing the radius. Okay, so I can just move that. I can make it bigger. It's not doing anything to it. It's just graphically so that you want to see it better, right? But if it's too small for you, right, you can make it bigger or smaller. Okay, so it's just a slider. Okay, however, if you want, because that's individual joints, right? So you can change the size of the individual joints. However, if you want as well, you can also what do you call this? Change the whole sizes of the all of the joints by just going to display, animation, and then joint size. Okay, so I'm just going to click on that. There's a slider that changes, making it bigger and smaller. And this is global. You see that? So this one is also being affected. Okay, so it's really just changing it, and it depends on your preference. Okay, and it's nothing really. It's doing nothing really except for the graphical representation. Okay, so that it would just you'd see it better. All right. Okay. Next. So what I want to show next is basically a lock. Okay, a gimbal lock, which means there are, again, I showed you kanina when I was using the pivots. There are limitations, right? Then we added the concept of parenting. There are also limitations. Okay. Same with the joints, right? So with the joints, with the skeleton, there is also limitations to it. Okay. So with this naman, okay, if we would go zoom in, let's say with this, no, let's say I'll make another joint. So this one, yeah. Then let's zoom in it on. Focus on that. You see it? Okay. See my joint? Right. Oh, no. A problem. Naman po. What's causing that? All right. So anyway, so ayaw ng manipulator. Does it want me to turn or orbit? Anyway, so doesn't matter. I'm almost done anyway. So let's go with the rotate. Okay. So with the rotate, I'm going to turn on the option box. Okay. Right now, I'm actually at gimbal. Okay. So I'm just gonna reset my tool. Okay. This is your normal rotate manipulator. Okay. So if you notice, right? So if I want to change this, look at that. So I'm going to change the axis, right? So I can change the rotation like so, change the rotation like so, etc., etc. That's pretty generic, right? However, that is not really what is happening. Okay, that is not what is really happening. Okay, there's the math behind it is different. Okay, so basically, what it's doing is it's doing a gimbal. Okay, a gimbal is like a gyroscope, basically. Okay, so maybe let's go do a quick Google what the gimbal is. Okay, so gimbal. It's just a stabilizer. Well, that's the common a gyroscope na lang. All right, there you go. So this is where it's referenced from. Okay, So this is where it's referenced from. Okay. So back. All right. However, like I said, no, this is not the actual thing that is happening. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to reset everything back to 0. Okay. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to change it to gimbal. Okay. So let's see what happens if I change the preference. I'm zooming in, but look at this, no? Let's say I rotate along, let's say Z na lang. I'm going to rotate along Z. Okay. No problems, right? Easy. I can rotate. Okay. What if I rotate along X? Okay. Wait a minute. Why is it not moving? Right? So it's a point of reference, right? X basically is like this rotor. You see that? It's the big thing. So that means it's stationary. Okay, so you cannot move it because it's stationary. It's holding it. Okay, you understand? You understand the concept? Okay, so that means
Yes.
if I move it, it's not gonna rotate. Okay. However, look, what if I move Y, right? So I'm gonna rotate. You see what's happening with the axis of X and Z, right? So what's gonna happen is eventually it's gonna align and it's going to lock. So that means when it's locked, right? So this one, look, if I'm gonna turn it, it's still doing that. And X ren, if I turn it, it's just locked. Okay, you can't turn it the other way around anymore. Okay? You see the limitations, and this is what we call the gimbal lock. Okay, so those are the limitations of basically the joints. Right, so that's the very basics, very foundations of joints. Okay, so anyway, so this is going to be my lecture for today. Any questions so far? You understand? Yeah.
Sir, I have some simple ideas.
Yes.
Sir?
Thank you. Yeah, go ahead. Go ahead. What's your question?
Sir, there's actually one idea I like to do since I get the idea of rigging and the deformation and all of that. There are some ideas I like to try when using those joints and armatures.
Okay, go ahead.
Armatures.
Okay, go ahead. So as long as you have Maya, which is free anyway, right? So just download it. You have installed this, right? You have installed
Yes.
Maya. Okay, good.
I have Maya already. Well, except it's 2022 version.
It's okay. Don't worry. I just had to install the 23 version because it's not working in the computers. Okay, so that's why this is actually in my laptop.
Okay.
All right.
So here's some example.
Go ahead. You want to share?
So here, I like to have some. There's some sample ideas I like to do with the rigging and all that. A treasure chest, spider drone, robot arm.
Oh yes, definitely. You can do that. We'll get there. Definitely. Okay, we'll get there. We'll do some advanced rigging. Yes.
Okay.
Okay. How about the others? Do you have any questions? You guys? Let's see the chat. Maybe I'll stop sharing. Chat. There you go. I need to review gimbals again. Basta one of the let's do it again. Okay. Share my screen again. Okay, share. My chat box. I lost my chat box. Anyway, so I'll reset again. No? So I'm just going to reset my settings. So I'll put it back to 0. So put back to 0, enter. All right. So this is rotation, right? So I'm going to rotate it. Look at the axis. Be careful. So I have x-axis. I have the y-axis, which is green. I have the z-axis, which is blue, right? So look what happens if I move z, right? So there's no problem, right? It's just, so z, wait a minute. X is just following, right? So it's at, doesn't have any problems, okay? But, okay, let's say I'll zero it out again. Okay. What happens if I turn this? I'm turning y. Look at this. No. So z is not following, right? It's locked. Okay. Z is not following. And it's eventually it's going to lock. It's going to be in the same axis. So that means I cannot rotate this way anymore. You understand? So I cannot rotate along z anymore because the z is now the same as x. You see what I mean? So now it's locked. You see the difference between that? That's what I meant with the gimbal lock. It's going to lock eventually. Okay, so what you want to do is you want to limit your rotations. Okay, so if you're going to rotate it, it's up to there. Okay, you don't want to lock it, otherwise you'll have problems with this. Okay, you cannot rotate it like this anymore. Okay, or even with this. Okay, you cannot rotate it anymore because eventually it's going to lock. Okay, eventually it's going to lock like so, and you cannot rotate at the other axis that you want. So that's pretty much it. Okay, so let's go. Hey, does it make sense? Okay, good. Any other questions? Sir, class flow contains in Big Sky. I'm still going to migrate it. I haven't actually populated it yet. I was trying earlier, but I had a meeting. So anyway, so yeah, I'll populate it after. Once again, anything else? Yes, it's going to be towards animation. Yes, it's going to be animation as well. All right, so any other questions? The module is going to be posted after. I am not yet in the new campus. Yeah, it depends. It depends on the orientation. You can change kasi. You can change the orientation. Okay, but eventually it will lock. Okay, in any kind of orientation, right? It will lock. That's the limitation of the joints. Okay, and it's going to be frustrating if you do not know this. It's going to be what? You'll break the bones of your character. Okay? Sige. We're not going to render animation because we're going to be we're going to put it in game engines, right? So it's going to be real time. Okay? All right. So if you don't have any other questions, I guess that's it. It's animation.
Okay, sir.
It's still animation. We're going to tween. Okay. Okay. Sige. Thank you, guys. So that's it.
Thank you, sir.
Just wait for me to populate Big Sky. Thanks, you guys.
Thank you, sir.
All right.
Thank you, sir.
Okay, bye-bye.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir. Don't forget to upload yung videos of Big Sky.
Oh, yes.